Welcome back, creeps. This is a lovely little bonus episode that I set up with our friends Timothy and Ciara. You would have heard me talking about Tim in previous episodes. Tim is of the podcast Strange Familiars. He's also an author. He's written a bunch of books, and they're all fantastic. They come highly recommended from Greg and Dana Newkirk, to be honest. I've chatted with Tim on, I think, a couple of occasions now. I was on his show, and then just separately we had some emails back and forth. He's the one that I go to when I have questions regarding like cryptids and stuff like that. That's kind of his expertise or area of expertise. But he also is just a paranormal, I don't know. He does all sorts of paranormal madness anyway. He gets some of the most bizarre and interesting stories that I've ever heard on his show. So definitely go check out Strange Familiars. And then Ciara, she is his resident Philip Experiment Expert. So basically they're working on a little something themselves at the minute. We get into it a little bit in the interview. It's not actually so much an interview. It was just a conversation that we had. But Ciara is the one who read the book and is very familiar with the case and stuff like that. So she's the one who he'll use to reference. She's also come up with like special skills, meditation, stuff like that they reference and that they use in their own little private experiment. It's on Tim's Patreon, Strange Familiars on Patreon. You can also find like his artwork on Etsy. If you type in Strange Familiars, it comes up. I'm kind of just waffling on now, yeah, but Ciara was a delight to have on as well. And after I knew that their private experiment was going on because I'm a member of Tim's Patreon, because I wanted to know more about the experiments, to be honest. And so after we covered the Philip experiment, I was just like, you know what, these would be great to have on just to kind of clear up some of the questions that I had, or theories or ideas that kind of didn't really line up for me. We definitely didn't answer any questions, but we definitely expanded on things. So it was very cool. No, it's just a lovely conversation. Ciara has requested to remain a mysterious figure, so I have nothing to push in regards to what she does. But if you are in Tim's Patreon, Strange Familiars Patreon, you'll see Ciara's name quite a lot in the chat and in the Discord as well. So yeah, this is just us getting really weird with it. I think it was an absolute delight. And I'm kind of waffling on a little bit now, but I needed to do a little intro for it. So here we are. I hope you all enjoy. If you want to hear more stuff like this in the future, or if you have other podcasts that you would like to hear us chat with, especially like if it's a podcast that you would like to hear me and Dulce chatting to, let me know as well. To be honest, I usually just do these for schedule reasons. I'll just do it on my own because me and Dulce work opposite shifts. I think that's about it. I'm going to slide us in nicely here, just into the conversation. There was no start. There was kind of a finish, but then even after we finished, we ended up going on offline, like chatting and just, whatever. So yeah, anyway, enjoy. Please let us know how you feel in the comments, whether it's on Spotify or YouTube. Also, if you wouldn't mind leaving us an L review, a rating, and all that stuff, because we definitely need that stuff to help continue to grow the show and that type of business. So hope everybody's delighted. This is just a little bonus episode. We'll be back with another episode next week. And love yous all. TTFN. Bye. Everybody who is listening now has heard the previous episode on the Philip experiment. This is a lovely little bonus. And it's really just a selfish indulging basically of mine to get to chat this up. So Ciara and Timothy of Strange Familiars, all of my listeners have heard me rave about Strange Familiars, to be honest, for as long as I've been listening, because I am just I don't have much time these days to actually like binge podcasts and stuff, but that's kind of my regular one that I just like dipping in and out of, because it's just full of nerds and in the best possible way, you know what I mean? Like we're all interested in the same stuff. And I think Strange Familiars has gotten me into way weirder territories in terms of paranormal. Um, but Sierra, you and Timothy are working together on this special experiment. That's top secret. And if you want to find out, you can go to Strange Familiars Patreon, like me.
Yeah.
Find out more
Um,
there.
yeah,
But
I mean,
yeah.
so basically, I knew the basics of of the Philip experiment. And for years, I loved the idea of it, and I was kicking around the idea. And then separate from that, of these past few years, my thought is has very much been that Bigfoot is a spirit. I cannot, at this point in my understanding of the paranormal and interpretation of these things, I cannot see this as a undiscovered creature anymore. It's not an animal that's out there, in my opinion.
Mhm.
It's some kind of spirit. Genus loci, spirit of place, maybe some kind of nature spirit, but a spirit nonetheless. And I was actually kicking around with Josh Cutchin and Soraya from Where Did the Road Go one night. I think we had finished recording and we were talking about the Philip experiment. And I just, like, out of nowhere said, I'm going to Philip experiment a Bigfoot. And that was sort of the genesis of this. I took the idea to Sierra because we've kind of been working on different things together, and we came up with a series of parameters. Like, if we're going to do this, how are we going to do it? But the main thing is the most important thing is we are trying to manifest a Bigfoot in a town, so not in the woods, because the idea was if we try to manifest it in the woods and we get something in the wood, how do we know it's just not a Bigfoot passing through or something like that,
Mhm.
something else. So we chose a town which we are keeping secret from everyone because we don't want people to mess with the results and the experiment as we go on here. Eventually we'll reveal it, but for right now, well, in the midst of the experiment, we're keeping it secret. And we came up with a sort of how we're going to do this, and a set of guidelines and so forth. And we just went ahead and said, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's try to manifest a Bigfoot. So we are in the earliest stages of that right now.
Yeah.
It's an experiment that involves the Strange Familiars patrons, right? So it's a big group experiment. How many people were doing the Philip experiment? They were like,
Uh,
The core group was like 8, I believe.
yeah, I think they started out with a loose like 14, but it was known at the time like this isn't going to be the core group, and then they kind of whittled themselves down. Which I made this joke. Sorry, I was actually just pulling up my notes from the episode that I did, and I made the joke in that like the self-awareness in this experiment is like one of the scariest things. Like these people had to know, all right, I'm not really one of these, like, I'm not really clicking with the rest of the group or with like
hmm,
John or whoever. And they had to remove themselves, like, which I thought was even that was pretty cool. But um, what I like when I'm reading the group stuff about your guys' experiment, it feels really folky and wholesome. And I like that's what drew me into it in the first place, to be honest. So I love that. And then, yeah, like it's probably you that put this in my head, but like, what is Bigfoot but a poltergeist in the woods, right? Isn't that?
yeah, yeah. I mean, we talk a lot about that from Where the Footprints End. So the idea if there was, 8, 9 people, whatever, in the original Philip experiment, and we code named this the Big Philip experiment, just, as a sort of humorous code name. But we thought, what if we source intention from, every Strange Familiars patron who wants to participate? So I have no clue how many people are actually doing this, but we assume it's quite a few. from the comments we're getting, people are getting interesting effects. They're getting synchronicities and things showing up around them that seem to point in the right direction. That things are headed in the right direction. And we have been in the town, well, many times, but since we were like, had the real start, we've been there once, and we've already found some interesting things that, we set up certain markers that would be signs of our spirit. And we found some of those primary markers immediately after beginning.
Well,
Yeah,
and
it's been really
Sierra,
cool.
oh,
Sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because you're doing this remotely, like, isn't that right? You're in California, or you said
I'm in
California, what?
Seattle. Yeah,
Seattle,
Seattle.
sorry, West Coast.
Yeah,
My
West
bad.
Coast. It's all the same. One's just warmer up north and
Yeah.
or colder up north and warmer down south. But yeah, Tim sent me the Conjuring Up Philip PDF, I think almost a year ago, and
Mhm.
I read through it all, took a bunch of notes, and was fascinated by it. It's up my alley in my own areas of research and interest. And after doing so, we kind of put our heads together and with his Bigfoot expertise and the Bigfoot poltergeist overlap, we were able to come up with some sort of structure and set up to start this experiment. And at first, I was very much like, it's a scientific experiment, and these need to be the stipulations, and it needs to have all of these controls. And Tim was like, I don't know. Maybe we don't need to have all of that. And I think after hashing through it quite a bit, we've come to a happy medium
Yeah.
to be able
Hmm.
to have it not be so rigid, which I think is actually really important in the long term, to have a little bit of play and openness and the creativity. And it seems to be very effective so far. So,
Yeah, and that's one of the points I made. To be honest, like, because Conjuring of Philip was the book that I read as well, and it was one of those ones. I think the reason why it stuck out to me, like, what was it, 1973 or 75 when the book came out or something like that. But it was like the golden era, right? Of, well, everything has to be prim and proper, and everything is based off of this like posh English etiquette. Well, I guess that lasted for about 70 or 80 years, right? That style of writing. But the book Conjuring Up Philip was like almost sterile. Yeah, I think is the word for it, right? Like if clinical.
yeah.
Like at certain points, almost to a fault. Like I would have said, just because I came in, I claim to be a skeptic, but obviously, like I'm reading this stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not that skeptical, but I was reading it and I was like, you guys are going above and beyond in the book. Sorry, not you guys, to like prove how scientific and factual that you're all being, and it kind of starts to deduct then from you're like, okay, like I believe you, like we're here, I'm on chapter 7, like I'm obviously invested somewhat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would agree, like you need that like certain amount of play, and that's actually, I'm stealing straight from the book because that's what it came down to, right? It was like childful playfulness and stuff like that.
Definitely. I can understand why they would need the rigidness and the scientific presentation at the time, and even
Hmm.
now. There are people who look for that when phenomena is presented. But, once the original group in the Philip experiment decided, or they realized it wasn't working with the meditation and the seriousness, and they had to introduce different methods of holding the seances that included laughter and jokes and play and singing. It really just lit up the whole thing. And I think that that's what we're trying to cultivate some in the group that we have together is a lot of joy and gratitude. And there's a very positive aspect to the experiment that we are doing together, which is good.
Yeah, and I think like to Sierra's credit, if she wasn't here, I would have just probably just run in and started this thing without thinking too much of it. And I think that meeting in the middle has helped us kind of thing. Because, in the end, I don't think we're ever going to prove anything to mainstream science or even to any, hard skeptic that just doesn't believe this, so this is probably just for us, and for Strange Familiars patrons, and maybe we'll present this to the world someday in some form, whether that's some kind of public podcast or a book. I don't know. We'll see what happens and what form it takes, but I don't expect to, take this to some kind of, scientific panel and say, look, we've got these amazing results. But I think they were with the Philip experiment, so that's why they probably had those more rigid things in there.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like, I mean, that's what they said. And like the two, I think overseers was the word they used, where like, well, one was a parapsychologist, but one was a medical psychologist, and they made sure to make that known, like, and that's it. Like, they were at that time actively trying to get the scientific recognition, which obviously, like, fair play to them. But unfortunately, I don't think they did get that. Like, but the outcome, like, and I say this all the time with like Weekly Creep and even Houston Strange, it's like the wins that you get on the smaller level are so much more. Well, it's like, though I think I'm allergic to money at this point, so I don't think of it like that. Like, we have friends all over the place now, and like for the Philip experiment, it was like they made a little family, and that carried on for years afterwards. Which is like, I'm sure they didn't just stop. Like, I know that the book ended and they said that they were continuing on, but then I couldn't really find much. I found like a Google AI result suggesting that there was like another experiment, not the Lilith one, but another one again. And I was like, okay. So it seems like it kind of just fizzled out. But, and then like, I'm trying to find the quote here, but basically they were like, they didn't know how far this was going to go, right? So to touch on what you were saying, Tim, like, say if you had just gone head first into this, like the precautions that they took in the Philip experiment, like the reason why they had that room, obviously to get them all into the mindset, but they genuinely did not know if this thing would escape or get out, or you know what I mean, something along those lines. So I think the safety, like the rigidity there, is also a good guideline for like just keeping a level head right throughout.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important with this stuff, whether you're doing a Philip experiment kind of thing or just, whatever, visiting a haunted house, going out to look for Bigfoot, whatever. It's like you got to kind of keep your wits about you and not get too crazy about anything, I think.
Yeah. I think a good example. I'm sorry, one of my cats is trying to get out. We have a kitten. I found a kitten in work last night. We chased it for an hour through the warehouse, and I was supposed to get rid of it today. And the person anyway. So now all the cats are freaking out. But I'll be right back as soon as I open this door. My bad.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay.
But yeah, a good example though of keeping a level head. I was, quote unquote, on assignment up in San Antonio probably 2 months ago now. And so I spent like 10 or 12 hours they were public parks, but they were like isolated, and I was covered in mosquito bites. We were in riverbeds, and just a sweaty, long, grueling day. And I was going to stay up there, but then I decided last minute, you know what, like I really like late night drives through Texas. It's like some weird goal of mine. And so I decided I'd drive back. But before I did, I wanted to go and see the Goat Lady Bridge. And I didn't have high expectations or anything like that. It was just a bridge with like a cool, definitely folklore-y story. And as I'm driving up, like one of the legends of the place is like she's supposed to jump on top of your car or like scrape the roof of your car. What they don't tell you is that there's really low hanging branches, and I have a roof rack. So I'd like done a pass by, and I turned around to like really get a look at it, but it's closed off. the actual bridge. So as I'm driving back, the branch gets caught in the roof rack and starts scraping all down. I nearly shit myself. Like,
Yeah.
straight
That
away,
could
I
be
was
a
like, "Oh my god!"
horrifying sound. That could like we have holly trees outside, they're right outside this window here, and at night, if the wind blows, they're just scraping the windows. It sounds horrifying.
It's how funny you can go from being like, "No, no, no, I'm a skeptic." You know what I mean? And then you're in your car alone, like, bricking it.
The legend is real.
Yeah, if for that moment the legend was real, which is a good point, like even on the Philip experiment, right? Because so this is where I couldn't get my head. I couldn't like pick a route and go down it and stick to it. And this is really why I wanted to have you guys on, because I wanted to have your opinion. Like we were saying, I would love to like do a session here and contact the Philip, you know.
Yeah.
But my thought was like, say if I had an overseer who had the full story, like the full fleeced out story from the end of the book, with every single detail, they would know that. I would know, I would have a loose idea, and based off the questions that we asked, we would see how correct our Philip was to the Philip, even though we were talking to the Philip. And there was just so many variants along that line. So let's say, for example, you know, the group has the experience, even if they all experience the same thing at the same time, is it really the same entity? You know, who
Right.
draws that line?
Well, not only that, but I've said for a long time, like, so the idea was like they created a ghost, so to speak. I have a sneaking suspicion based on just this is just the way I look at the world as a just being full of these different spirits, good, bad, and otherwise, is there are lots of things, and I think this happens often with your regular hauntings when somebody says, "Oh yeah, this woman, nurse from the Civil War died here," and people keep seeing. Well, are they? I think there's lots of things out there that are willing to step in and say, "Oh, you want me to be Philip? You want me to be the nurse from the Civil War? Sure, yeah, I'll be that," because they want interaction and interchange for some reason. I don't know why. So I think there are lots. So are we making a Bigfoot, or are we contacting something that's going to go? Yeah, sure, I'll be that for you. Whatever. Something that's already there that knows, sees what we're doing is like, I'll pop in and be that, no problem. And I truly think, as someone who almost an animist, I guess, I look at the world just be full of spirits. To me, that's like quite possible that that's happening, that we're not creating anything. We're making a space for something that's willing to play with us, and it might have happened with Philip as well.
Yeah. I feel like it's hard to differentiate sometimes.
Yeah, and a big part of me is like, does it matter? It doesn't matter. Like it in the end, it's that spirit contact that I really want. So, you know, there's no way we'll ever know, but I'm just saying, like, I think it's very maybe human centric or something to think of, like, yeah, we made a ghost. Maybe they may have made a ghost. We may make a Bigfoot, or it might be something that's already there. That's like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'll be Philip.
So in that sense, then, because like what they keep referencing is, poltergeist or RSP, like recurring spontaneous. Yes, I am reading that from my notes to make sure I get it right. Recurring spontaneous psychokinesis, which is stuff like Guy Playfair and Morris Gross, right? Like when you're reading stories from around like these are the two that I always reference, but like Enfield and the Black Monk of Pontefract, stuff like that, like the really famous cases. They always kind of reference RSP at some point to be like, oh well, it's just an outburst of hormonal and emotional energy, whatever. And then they quickly go back to, but it's definitely a ghost. You know, it's like, well, make up your mind. But then, like the other thing is, these RSP occurrences or incidents, like again, just referencing the Enfield for handiness, and because the visual is there with like the Conjuring 2 and stuff, the police in the house and the chairs being like moved across the room, like quite violently, knives being thrown, stuff like that. But when it's in a controlled environment, what's the most that can happen? Yuri Geller bends a spoon.
Hmm.
Why is that? Like, or is it, well, what's your opinions on that?
I think, oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, Sarah.
Um, I'm super interested in psychology and the overlap with psychology and paranormal experiences. And a lot of the cases that they reference in Conjuring Up Philip talk about the emotional overlap of stifled emotions or coping mechanisms that are maladaptive to some sort, causing the poltergeist phenomena. And I think the ultimate conclusion that the overseeing doctors came to is it's much easier to believe that the phenomena is due to a ghost than to believe that our own emotional body or electrical systems in our own being are capable of causing this phenomena. And if you look at the overlap of the coping mechanisms, the triggers in which the phenomena occurs, um, I think that could provide maybe more validity of the origin of some of the phenomena being from the individual or the group collective psychic activity versus perhaps an entity just walking in and filling the space. And there might also be cases of both happening at the same time, being drawn to the high emotions and the shift in state mentally and physically, and saying, that looks delicious. I'm going to hang out around here for a bit. So I
Yeah,
think
that's exactly
interesting.
where I was going because it's like sleep paralysis. I always say, like, yes, there is a scientific explanation for sleep paralysis. We know this happens, but there's also a lot of really strange things that happen around sleep paralysis. And I've often thought when someone goes into sleep paralysis, is that maybe sending an antenna up, and the other's like, oh, okay, there's somebody. We can use that. And they shoot over to that person and mess with them or, do whatever. I wonder if it's not the same kind of thing. Yes, poltergeist activity can be caused by humans, but does something else see that in a sense and go, oh, okay, someone's working with psychic stuff there. Let's head over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to kind of fall into the same, especially like lately, because the people that I've been talking to, they're not like lifetime experiencers, say, like for want of a better word. Like they're people who are like new to this, like maybe they've watched Ghost Adventures when they were kids or whatever, but now like they're experiencing stuff. And I'm trying to not like coddle is definitely not the right word, but I'm just trying to give like broad explanations. And I always say like, I don't know. You
Right.
know what I mean? Here's the reasoning that has been given in the past, like by different people, and I tend to kind of straddle both sides of the road and just say like, look, I think it is a combination. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I think that was a great example, Tim, the sleep paralysis
Yeah.
in particular, because like some of the stuff that gets reported out of that is like beyond terrifying, and
Oh yeah.
like I try not to dwell on dreams and stuff like that, but at the same time, like usually if I have a nightmare, it's kind of fun. You know what I mean? Like it has that aspect to it. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, that'd be like a really good short story that I'm never gonna write, and I'll write it down. But then the other night, like I had the first genuinely terrifying dream that I've ever had. Well, that I've had in years, and like it's 3 or 4 days later, and I'm still feeling gross about it. So
Mm.
that's where the skeptic part of me is just like, well, yeah, maybe that was just influenced by this and that, but genuinely, there's a small part of me that's like, I got like, there was this old lady who was supposed to be a djinn, and she touched my finger. That's all it was. I'm still skeeved out by this.
Mm.
But no, so it just goes back to I love the idea of like teenagers are always getting blamed, specifically teenage girls. I don't necessarily believe in like demons and stuff like that. Or just not by like, the definitions that people put on them so easily. Like, you know what I mean? I like to call all this stuff just fairy stuff. Probably just because of where I'm from. But I like the idea that, well, this house is in turmoil because, there's stuff going on. Teenagers hate everything anyway. And yeah, here comes this little chaos being or this like bubble of chaotic energy, and it comes in, just kind of goes, let's get to work and let's make these people think that they're absolutely batshit crazy. And the explanations that they're going to give are going to make them feel even more crazy. So they're just going to bottle it up and then separate. So yeah, basically, I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
I both end, a lot of this stuff because, well, like you said, the truest answer is I don't know.
Yep.
And anybody who says they do, they need to bring their work and show us because there's a lot of theories out there, and a lot of people will tell you this is how this works and this is. But how do they know? Like, come on, let's put it to work. Let's experiment and see if it works. And where are you getting this stuff? Usually, it's just like, well, it's known. It's known.
Yeah.
Well, wait, let's. What are you talking about? Like, there's a lot of known ghosts in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. It's known and then when you do the historical research, these people never existed, and yet people are seeing the ghosts, and I believe that they're seeing the ghosts. What's going on there?
And that just goes to show, though, right? Like that's where Philip slots in so well,
Yeah.
right? Sierra, sorry, did I cut you off there?
No?
No. Um, right. So one of the outliers that I've become obsessed with in this particular story is when I can't remember who exactly in the group it was, but basically the last session that they had before going back to the Toronto Society main house that they had Philip's room set up in. Previous to this, they had been doing like home sessions, I think because of like the Christmas or the summer holidays or something.
Mhm.
And so they told the table, because that's how it keeps getting labeled, and even that like annoys me so much. But he was like, "All right, Philip, come on now. We're going. You better get going over to your your regular house or whatever he said." And then when the guy gets back to his house that night, the table that they had previously used had been ripped out from behind a heavy armchair. It was like halfway down the hallway of his apartment. And then I'm kind of going, well, now this is like breaking the rule of the group, right? Because this is only one person if he is responsible for doing this, you know what I mean? So, yeah, that's another one that like stands out for me that I want to understand, but I just can't.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Sierra. Didn't they like set up parameters where if Philip, manifested in any of their private residences, they told it no, basically like go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to go back to the room essentially, but as Adam was saying, they did do a holiday break, and were conducting the sessions in a house. So I believe this one specific occurrence did happen after they tried to go back to the room and that they originally started in. And my question is there too around this is like, was it the subconscious psychic phenomena of the group wondering if the the table and Philip would actually move? Um, or was it this one member's subconscious projection causing the psychokinetic phenomena of the table moving in his own apartment? I forget what was done after this incident happened, but I do think there was a redirection back to the room as well, and as well as informing the group of what had happened. Um, I'm
Yeah,
not quite
I'm not
sure.
gonna lie. I can't actually remember what happened afterwards. I just remember reading that point over and over again and going like, this was one of the things that took me out of the clinical environment of it. And like, I do a lot of my, reading here like really late at night. And it was one of those times where I like genuinely started like looking over my shoulder because I was like, no, that like if that was in a horror movie, that would be the scene that everyone in the pictures is going like, oh my God, like, talk about unexpected. You know what I mean? So that's probably why it stands out to me, is because like I genuinely found it scary. You know, whereas so far up until this point, everything has been again clinical, but also like kind of lighthearted. You know what I mean? Like even when they switched over to the Victorian style seance, which I was expecting, you know, people to be wearing like morning clothes and everyone to be very dour. I didn't know that this was like, you know, a jolly time where everyone would come in and like laugh and joke. Like, it even goes like Monsters Inc., right? Like laughter was so much stronger than the screams of the children. I'm like,
Yeah.
that to me, that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've kind of thought about what. So right now we have this set for our experiment for a year and a day because I like folklore and that comes up in traditional folk songs a lot. That time period, a year and a day. We may continue if it's fun and continue and we're getting good activity. We may continue it after that. We'll see. But I have often thought, like, what happens if Bigfoot, Big Philip, rather, this spirit, this entity, goes out of the town and comes home with one of us? You know, what do we do with that? And you know, another little bit of inside baseball here is that you know we had we'll just call them markers that we charged as a group to sort of place around this town where we're trying to manifest this entity, and they very much to me felt like hardware. They felt like nothing until we did this first group meditation. And the closest thing I can, and I'm not claiming to have what's it, theanosis or whatever, the ability to tell what blessed objects are. I do not have that ability, but I do have a reverence for them as a Catholic. And they, to me, they when I get a blessed object, it always somehow feels very important to me. And these objects went after we did the meditation from feeling like just hardware, like I said, to something that was very almost like a blessed object or something very important. I went out immediately after doing that meditation, that first group meditation with everybody, and saw a UFO in the sky. It was a blue light shot across the sky. It was slower than a meteor, but faster than a plane. And just thought, okay, here we go. Like this is like something's going to happen here. I fully expected poltergeist activity and everything else to follow until I got those markers out of my house, but it didn't. That's all, to my knowledge, that's all that happened. It's a UFO, but you know, it's a thing for sure.
Yeah.
That's such like a game on, like, you know what I mean? Like, talk about like acknowledging it. And funny enough, because I know like we've spoken briefly before, like obviously I grew up in Ireland, very Catholic heavy, and so obviously as a child I was like, "Oh, I don't want to go to church, blah blah blah, whatever."
Yes, same way.
Yeah, and that has stuck with me now as an adult, like to the point where I can be quite obnoxious. But it's also one of the things that draws me to Strange Familiars because I love hearing your perspective on that kind of stuff. And funny enough, last year my granddad passed away, and I went back home for the funeral. I was tasked with, we need to get rosary beads to put in the coffin with us. So I was like, okay, Jesus Christ, here, let's go. And I went to the church that I used to go to when I was a kid with my grandmother, who has also now since passed. And, you know, very cool church. They called it the Cave, I think was like the nickname, because it was just all stone.
Oh,
It's
wow.
not literally carved into the thing, but it's gorgeous. And ironically, I'm just putting this together now. There's another story in the Conjuring Up Philip book that actually took place in my hometown. Because when the book by Camille Flammarion, I think the French guy, it's always referenced. It's literally called like Maison Hantée, which is like just French for haunted houses, right? There's a story in that based out of Kingstown, which was the British name for my town, which is Dunleary. Anyway, that's in Conjuring Up Philip. But I went to the church and I walked in and I was like, oh, here we go. Like they're going to try and get money out of me or so. I was just being really cynical, you know? And I walked up to the priest actually came out and he just walked straight up to me and he was like, can I help you? I was like, oh, I'm trying to get these rosary beads, blah, blah, blah. He goes, okay, cool. He goes off into a little room and he comes back out. And I had like money out. And I was like, oh, how much do I owe you? And he just put them in my hand. He said, no, no, no. You go on. Like, that's free. They felt like the most important thing. It was like carrying, like, I don't know, like a water balloon filled with expensive whiskey. So, you know what I mean? Like, something, I was like, nothing bad can happen to these. Like, I have to get them. It was like, I don't know, handing a child something really fragile. You know what I mean? That's how I felt. And it just like kicked me or threw me for a loop then afterwards because I was like, okay, these are, basically just a haunted object now that I'm really infatuated with.
I have ended up through just, I guess, strange familiars, the flower path, and everything I've been interested in, and the Garden Madal apparitions and stuff. I have ended up with more relics than I should have in my house. And sometimes the weight of that impacts me in such, it's like, sometimes I will give them away to appropriate people because I don't, this, what am I going to do? Like,
Yeah.
at some point, but I keep them all in a special place, and but there is a weight to that. Like, these are, whether you believe it or not, someone believes it. I happen to, but it doesn't matter who believes it and who does. Someone believes it, and that's why I've given out Blessed Saint Benedict medals to people who weren't Catholic but are interested in the paranormal, and they're like, hey, help me. I need something, and I always tell them, if you decide you're done with this, you have to either give it back to a Catholic or bury it. Like it's that important to me. Like, you don't just toss it away or just forget about it in a drawer somewhere. So the weight of that, like, I completely get that. It's just there's a weight to it that and again, it's, whether you believe it or not, someone does, and I want to respect that. For me, I am Catholic, I am a believer, but even if I wasn't, I would still feel the same way. If someone gave me a blessed object from any other religion, a Buddhist, I would feel the same way about it. Like, I have to, this is special,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like, sorry, I didn't mean to get us so sidetracked, but to me, like, it's what I tell people. Like, I have this ring right here, and I'm wearing another one. It's like, this is just a small ring. If I give it to you, it's whatever. And then when I say, oh, this is my granddad's ring,
right?
You know what I mean? Then it's like, oh shit, okay. But on the basic level, right? So to wrap that back into Philip, the table that they were using, they said in the book that they knew when Philip was there based on how the table felt.
Wow.
Yep.
And so Ciara, what's your opinion on that? Because there was also the other reference of them sending him to do their bidding, which sounds really evil, but they just said, go upstairs and knock on the wall. You know what I mean? And he could do that. So then, was the wall alive? And then he would return back to the table, and they felt or claimed to feel him come back,
That's a good perspective to bring up and a good question. I feel like, as you and Tim were both touching on, there's something to intent and the ritual and routine to cause presence, I guess is the word I'll use for this. Like, there's presence in the rosary, there's presence in relics, there's presence in the table of Big Philip or the collective intent or whatever. And I do think it brings a different texture, a different feeling to the experience. And I think it's similar with people who experience hauntings. They know, they can feel that something's in the room with them or something's off. It's that so-called sixth sense. The same thing with mediumship or channeling, or people who experience any sort of the clairaudience, clairvoyance.
Right.
There's a feeling to all of it. And I think specifically with psychokinetic activity, there's this reference to things being an instrument. Again, for poltergeist agents, you are the instrument for the phenomena for activity to occur, but you can also have objects be the instrument, like the table, or the lights in the lamp, or the radio, if you're using ITC sort of communication. And perhaps you can send the knocking from the table up to the ceiling to knock on the floor of the story above you. It's all about the intent, but first you need to have the belief that you're capable of causing it to happen in the first place, or Philip being capable of it at least.
Right, and that like actually kind of brings it. Well, I don't know about if full circle is a thing, but it the conclusion that I had basically wrote was like, so basically I argued that the reason, and I think the Lilith experiment kind of bolstered this as well, like the reason why the Philip experiment didn't work for their first year was because not that they didn't believe in themselves, but I think because they had no like proof to base it off. Whereas after the year, they went back and they studied the paperwork from the two folks that I haven't got written down here, but the guys who have been writing for the British Society for Psychical Research, or the main Society for Psychical Research, they reread their papers, or I think maybe new papers had been printed since then. And in that, they were able to say, okay, well, it definitely worked for them. And then within, I think, 5 weeks, it definitely worked for the Canadian group or the Toronto group. And then with the Lilith experiment, which again, if you're listening to this, you've already listened to the last episode, I'm sure. If not, it's too late. You're already in it. But the Lilith experiment worked so fast, I believe, because these people knew, like, okay, well, the proof is in the pudding, right? It worked for Philip. Why wouldn't it work for Lilith? And then that kind of goes back to what I was saying, like if I was to contact Philip, because their ultimate goal was to see him, right? Like get a visual manifestation, what we all think of as a ghost, or most of us do. And I think if they had been told that it had worked for somebody else and they believed the source, like say if Dr. Owens, the overseer, told them, no, like this every time, you know what I mean? It always works for these guys. Then I think the odds of them actually seeing something would have been massively improved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely. And I think I asked Ciara this. Did they, like, how did they resolve the Philip experiment? Did they do any sort of like farewell ritual, a banishing goodbye, or they just pack up the table and go?
No, from what I remember reading, I don't think that they did anything to dismiss him, for lack of a better term. I know that a few people who went on to do the Lilith experiments sat in on some of the sessions to observe the phenomena and see how it happened. And I think some of the people from the Philip group went on to like help instruct the Lilith experiment as well, but I haven't done a lot of reading on the Lilith experiment. I think I'm just guessing here, but I think because the knowing, in air quotes, that Philip was just a part of each of the individual participants' subconscious mind activity, they might not have given it enough validity to dismiss him as a thing that actually existed. And I think that's kind of where our experiment differs, because we can understand with anecdotal evidence between when the Philip experiment happened to now, that these entities that come out of these situations can actually have their own ability, their own choice at some point. Egregore and Tulpa are the commonly tossed around words, and I think they might be a little overused. That might not be what's happening exactly, but I think that's the closest thing we can reference, but we have set up our own intention with that of if phenomena continues to happen in the experiment throughout the year in a day and things are good and not scary or seem negative, we will eventually release Philip to do his own good bidding, um, and send him farewell. And if things don't happen, then we will just remove the markers and say we tried. And if things go negatively, we revoke our intention, we call him back in, and also remove the markers and dispose of them properly.
Probably calling a priest.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's so interesting, and it's a really good point as well because I had all this stuff like written down, and of course, when I'm actually looking for it, it's not there. But there were like I can't remember the exact quote, but basically it said, "At no point must the Philip Experiment group actually believe that Philip is a separate entity."
Okay. Yeah.
And
See,
that was
That was
like a
key.
hard line rule. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. And
So,
again, I think that's beneficial to what they were trying to do because, like I said, they're trying to take something, a research project, and present it to the scientific community and say, "Look what we did. Here's real stuff." I think that's an important factor in theirs, probably. But yeah, I don't know. Personally, my feelings on it are like, yeah, but don't you want to say goodbye at least? You know, and I know they can't because they're again they're trying to have that sort of scientific edge to it. But
exactly, and it was another one of those things like throughout the book. I guess like my own, I don't know, emotions or whatever. Like I know how like I would in my head I almost looked at like Philip as like a pet, right? Which obviously isn't right, but you know, surely if I was doing this, that's probably the connection that I would have had, like or like your little buddy that's always there. So I know for a fact that I would be. It's the same. Maybe it's the Irish thing. I don't know, but like something weird happens in the house or whatever, you just go, "Oh shit, that's Granda," or "That's cousin such and such just coming to say hello." Like, I feel like I would have the same mentality, but for the guys in the Philip experiment, they were expressly not allowed to have that mentality. So that's a really good point. And yeah, and then again from the book, I know that they were going to continue on, but I don't think like there was no hard line stop to it. And to be honest, kind of sounds like they just ran out of steam. But I could be wrong, you know.
yeah, yeah. Have you ever seen the footage? There's actually some footage of it. When the Newkirks were on tour, they actually had someone on their tour, and they played some like
I
video footage.
I don't remember seeing it at the Newkirk show, but we saw like a very early interpretation of that. But I've seen like some of the YouTube documentaries, and for the life of me, I've tried to watch them like 3 or 4 times. And whatever it is, there's like a block, and I can't get through them. But I have seen them like chasing the table around, like it's comical looking, you know. And it's and that like the interviewer, the talk show host or whatever is like, and now we've got a haunted table. Like he kind of makes them seem like kooks a little bit, and
Yeah,
for me it takes away a lot of what they were trying to do.
hey, that's been media since. Yeah, I mean, since there's been newspapers, at least, I find these old newspaper articles, and at least half of them have that tone. But nowadays, you can't have a story on the local news about Bigfoot or any ghosts or anything without them playing the X-Files theme.
True, yeah.
Up next, and they'll play the X-Files theme, and they'll make a joke out of it at the end, if not all the way through. So, yeah,
I
that's
feel
sort of
like, sorry, I feel like it's such a double-edged sword as well to have things be recorded or on a news segments because there's been claims of phenomena like this not happening nearly as well when people who are observing are doubtful.
Hmm.
I believe that happened with Uri Geller on a late night talk show. In theory, some people will debate that, but they can fight me later. Um, and But at the same time, when there is phenomena, and it does still happen, even with people who are doubtful in the audience, they say, oh, they're just faking it. Oh, it's a hoax. So, I mean, it's really cool that we have the documentaries and the photos and the film to observe what was going on, but skeptics one way or another, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's across the board. I mean, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about Bigfoot or UFOs or Marian apparitions or a ghost or whatever. There's always somebody there that's they faked it. They
Yep.
faked it.
Yeah, and I actually have like a good example of that. I I kind of, it was probably like last year or something, but through one of the Houston Strange episodes, I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I hate social media. Like I hate trying to do it. I hate being on it. And anyway, I was like, right, for this, I need to like try and do it properly. I made like TikToks and reels, like whatever. And the same day I posted one of the, I can't remember which one it was, one of the reels for Houston Strange. Anyway, I posted on TikTok and it like took off. And I was like, yes, look at this. I won. Like, this is great. And the same day I posted another video on Instagram. And it turned out it was a plane, right? But a buddy of mine was flying back from Colorado. He saw a plane heading in the other direction. And whatever way it happens, like with the atmospheric distortion, it looked crazy. So I don't even think I had any caption. I literally just posted this video and I was like, hey, check this out. Like, what do you think it is? I had something like within like 2 hours, it was like 50 something thousand views, nothing but angry dads. Like really, really angry dads and granddads going, AI, this is bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
calling me every name under the sun. On TikTok, where I had shared this other video that I like had put a bit more time and effort into, I had nothing but grannies. Like I'm talking like literally my followers on there are called like Mima of 7. And it was like full of like love and they were just throwing it out. But I think the thing is like I hit the target audience with the TikTok one just by chance, you know what I mean? Older ladies who love ghost stories. And I don't know, maybe I look like their grandson. I don't know. Whereas on the other side, I had pure skeptics, people who were just angry at the world for whatever reason. And there was because I didn't comment. I ended up deleting the video just because that level of hate really gets to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that I was trying to do. I was literally just like, oh look, my friend took this video. But the arguments within the comments, and I was like, there was people out here going, not arguing whether it was real or not. People were arguing whether I had done CGI or whether it was AI, and then they were fighting but amongst themselves. And I'm like, they're even skeptics of the skeptical of the
Right.
skeptics. Like at this
Yeah.
point, you know what I mean, so
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, now it's like an age-old thing, right? Like some of the skeptic reasoning is way more outlandish than just saying, "Hey, I think that was a fucking Bigfoot, man."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You've stumbled right into the reason why I have comments turned off on YouTube because
Right?
I'm interviewing people who have brought me these very personal, very private stories, and they're sharing and they're telling their experience. And I'm going to take them at their word because, very early on, my friend Sarai gave me advice. He said, I'd rather believe 10 liars than disbelieve one person who's telling the truth.
Yeah.
And it was really good. And I had a guy probably around episode 100. I wasn't anywhere near as far into the show as I am now, but he worked as he worked for a casino, I think as a blackjack dealer. And he called me up one time. He was talking and he said, hey, they train me to tell when people are lying. He's like, I can tell when people are lying. And he said, on your show, and again, this was early on, he said, you've had two people that have been lying. Do you want to know who they are? And I said, no, I don't. That's not any value to me. But that was good to know, right? That percentage, if it's 2%. And, assuming it's, and I really think that most people, so like the number one reason I get for people to change their name, I don't want people saying I'm crazy, right?
Yeah.
Most people, they're changing their name or they're using their first name. people are like, oh, they're trying to get famous. How are you going to get famous from doing that? Like, you're not going to get, there's no, like, just for sharing a ghost story on a podcast, you're going to get, no, they're not making
Yeah.
money. They're not, look, there's no money to pay them. I'm not, they're doing this to share their stories because they've heard other people share their stories, and it's very nice that they're doing that. So in any case, I'm not going to have people in the comments going, "Oh, they're lying, they're making that up." Blah, 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 blah. No, so comments off. Like that's the reason YouTube comments are off. I'm not having it because these people are sharing a very personal part of their life, and some of these things are very emotional for people. Some like I've had guys cry, about seeing Bigfoot in the woods. These are like hunters who can't go out in the woods anymore. They're so scared, and they're actually breaking down because this has affected them so much. I'm not going to have somebody comment on that. Oh, he's making it up. Get the hell out of here. It's like not happening.
Yeah, and like the level of this word catharsis, like for these people, like it's basically therapy, right? Like if you're talking to someone who's not going to judge you, or like maybe we'll say, oh, well, I don't think it was that, but it could have been this. You know what I mean? Point them in the right direction, kind of thing. Yeah, like that whole skeptic. Again, and I genuinely do try to be skeptic.
No, and
But
there's what I call an honest skeptic, and my best example of this is my wife, who, when we started out the podcast, you're all crazy. You're all crazy. All of you. You're all crazy. Anybody who's into this, you're just crazy. To over time softening a little bit, like, hey, like she had a flannel man experience and like telling her, hey,
right.
you've experienced it. That started the softening a little bit. And then eventually her getting to talk to witnesses face to face is what finally broke it down. And she saw how these people were affected. And she finally said one day, she turned to me and said, "Oh, well, I don't know what he saw, but he saw something." Like her eyes were like big. I said, "That's all I ask, right? You don't have to agree that he saw big. Just realize that to him that was something weird happened, and it affected him deeply. If that's all, the further you want to go, that's fine. Like and that's what I could call like an honest skepticism, because you're not just telling somebody, no, you didn't see what you saw." Yeah.
Yeah.
but that's it. Like, sorry, Sarah.
Oh, it's okay. I was just gonna say, anecdotally, I feel like it's important to just give people credit, whether it doesn't matter if it's true, if it happened or not, like it happened or they believed it happened and there's the emotion behind it. Like just let people have their experiences, as well as with things like experiments or recreating phenomena or trying things. Like true skeptics, like real honest skeptics, are willing to try it out themselves to see if they can replicate it or not, versus dismissing it completely and saying it's not real and I'm not going to try to replicate it because it's impossible, which is unfortunately what we see so much, not only in the scientific community, but sometimes in the paranormal community as well, with people who are interested in this stuff but don't actually believe.
Yeah, and we will wrap this up now because I'm conscious of your time. But that actually kind of brings us nicely into the other thing that really stuck out for me in conjuring up Philip was, and I don't know if it was any of the actual Philip Experiment group, but other members anyway of I kept jokingly calling them the TIFSPER, but the Toronto Society for Psychical Research. They had been on location, like a family called them up and were like, hey, something weird's going on in our house. We've seen this old lady, blah, blah, blah. And they all went out as investigators in like the early 70s or late 60s. I think they spent one night there from what I remember. They all witnessed this old lady. And then as in Conjuring of Philip, they were like, oh, well, that's clearly an example of telekinetic, like mind speak, basically. They all had this vision that they wanted to see, so they went in, they did see it. But that's kind of my thoughts on this whole, like, I mean, like, the heart of it, Texas Dogman. It's not something that I buy into personally, because I don't know any origins of this like Dogman phenomena. But I do think that these people, like say if I went out with somebody and we had a Dogman encounter, I fully believe that I would see probably a banshee or a Bigfoot
Maybe.
because it's not in my, say, like lexicon or whatever. But like, so that's the last thing I'll pose to you guys.
Well, I mean, I've fully experienced on more than one occasion being someplace with someone. And the best example is my friend John, who was a skeptic about the lights we see in this area called Site 7. And I said, well, come with me. I'm not like, if you can prove to me that these are something explainable, I'm happy for the explanation. Come on, let's do it. And he saw the lights and he was laughing. He's like, I don't know what these are. You know, he was like happy because it was like something that
Yeah.
was novel and he had not experienced before. But, you know, I've told this several times on Strange Familiars, but it's such a good example of this. He was on his knees, like these lights were coming right up to us, like they were curious about us. It was an amazing night. He was on his knees trying to grab one of these lights. Like he was reaching out, trying to grab it. I don't know, 6, 8 feet to his left, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, I forget. But I was looking at what I'm sure was the same light. And I happened to say, John, describe what you see. And he said, it looked like a ping pong ball size globe of light. That's not what I saw. I saw it looked like a single LED light just kind of hovering there in front of him. I didn't see a ping pong ball. I saw, you know, now I was at a different angle, but can it, the angle change, change the entire, I don't know, but I think it's like, to me, it's a great example of like a skeptic who left like, I don't know what those are, left a believer because I'm fearless about this stuff. You want to, sure, I'll take you there. You explain to me what they are. And B, of two people looking at one thing and seeing something different. And I don't know why that was. I cannot explain that.
It reminds me of something that's talked about among long haul truckers, especially through Texas. I can imagine
Mm.
there is the legend of the black dog, or just the phenomena of the black dog. And truckers at night will often see this big black dog either cross the path of their truck on the highway or run alongside the truck. And in my head, thinking about Texas Dogman or Dogman in general, you don't know if what you saw is a hallucination or not from driving for so long, or lights reflecting off of something in the darkness, or a different animal. But the idea is there, and you talk to other truckers about it, or whatever else, and it becomes this collective idea, and then people hear about that, or just Dogman in general, and you don't know whose Dogman is going to look like what. It's just this lore, and it shifts and evolves based on the viewer, based on the experiencer. I think that's the beauty of some of this.
So if you want to, as we're going here, if you want me to break open Dogman for you,
Go for it. Yeah.
this is via Brother Richard, working with a theory I put out in Where the Footprints End and kind of taking it further. And I love this theory. So in Where the Footprints End, I talk about the UFO phenomenon always gets more technological, always stays ahead of us. Airships, before we had airships in the 1800s, we're seeing these dirigibles before we even had them. And then we develop them a few years later, and they turn into these Art Deco UFO things. And then in the 70s, black triangles right before we get the stealth fighter, a big black triangle, right? People, they're always ahead of us, the UFOs. The wild man is going the other way. So in the medieval times, the Wadwos, these wild men, they were wizards of the forest. You would go to them for advice and things like that. Up into these articles I collect in the 1800s, some of them are wearing like raggy clothes and like carrying rusty muskets that won't fire, still cooking their food at campfires, these wild men in a lot of these articles. On to today, our wild man is very, very wild. The Bigfoot is like the wildest of the wild men. It's like, it's savage, it's losing humanity. And Brother Richard steps into that and says, well, how do you get even wilder? And Dogman's supposed to be the big, scary, or even meaner than Bigfoot. He's now lost any human attributes, and he's going back to the wolf. So it's even getting wilder. It's the wilder wild man. As we get further away from nature, our wild man gets wilder and wilder. So I think that that idea has real guts to me, and I'm going to be working with that going forward because there's something about that that feels right to me because the dogman sightings really just started popping up, you
Yep.
know, in a major way. So yes, you can point to some back years and years ago, but in a major way, only in fairly recent times they start popping up, and they're more and more and more, and they're popping up in places where people saw Bigfoot previously. So so do we have two gigantic hairy mammals out there competing for resources, or is there something else going on? I truly think like our wild man is getting wilder, and that's sort of the next stage. The even wilder wild man is losing more humanity and kind of going to that wolf stage.
That's yeah, like, that's what I'm just going to go with that from now on. That's what I'm going to tell people
That
next time they
I
ask you.
mean, when Brother Richard mentioned that too, I was like, yes, that's it. Because like I sort of laid the groundwork of the wild man getting wilder, and then he just kind of overlaid the dog man thing on it. I'm like, that's it. To me, that's like that
Yeah.
feels legit to me.
No, definitely. And then Sierra, I had the black dog phenomena that I had heard of before, at least, was kind of like a more English countryside kind of thing, like the Black Shuck and stuff like that. From that classic Darkness song, Black Shuck, He Don't Give a Fuck. Such a good song. But yeah, I had never heard of that from the trucker's perspective. And I never drove like tractor trailer trucks, but I drove big trucks through Canada for a little while, very late night and stuff like that. And I always thought like, oh, this is where I'll have,
Yeah.
like my UFO experience, stuff like that. But I never. That's really cool though. I'm gonna like keep an eye out for that, for
Yeah,
more of those stories. I need to hunt down
definitely.
some truckers, I think.
Yeah,
They have good stories.
they
Oh
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, guys, we've gone over the hour there. First of all, thanks so much
Oh, sure.
for letting me pick your brains because this has been like my favorite type of paranormal subject in a long time. So it's great to have a bit of somebody else who has also like read the book and stuff. Sierra, is there anything that you want to plug or anything that you want to share, Instagram, anywhere people want to find you, or you just want to remain a mysterious figure?
I think I'll remain mysterious for now. You
Sick.
can find me in and out of Tim's Patreon and Discord, Strange Familiars, so join us there.
Perfect. All right. And yeah, Tim, then what are we plugging? So you've
So
just released uh the um the name of it's
I have never minded the loneliness. My
I've
hermit
never
book.
minded the loneliness.
Yeah, so my hermit book, I've never minded the loneliness. It's story like biographies of I don't know how many hermits, a bunch of different hermits, photos, my best illustrations I've ever done. That book's available from me or Amazon, your local bookseller, wherever you get books. So if you're into like weird history or outsiders, whatever that may be, that's that. Strangefamiliars.com is where you can find Strange Familiars. And if you want to participate in our, what we call the Big Philip Experiment, got to be a patron. So that's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. That's something we're doing for the patrons. And yeah, you can jump on at any time. You don't have to be there from the start. Anybody can jump in at any time on that.
Yeah, and I can attest, like, unfortunately, I haven't had the time that I want to put into this, but every time I do jump into the chat, like I was saying earlier, it's just like there's something like folksy and wholesome about it. I don't even know if that's like a term to use, but that's
I
how it
think
feels to
that's
me.
I am so like I that seems like Strange Familiars in general. Like
Yeah.
I trust. I don't know if I don't know. I feel like I have the best patrons in the world. They're just like it is such a sweet, great group of people. I don't know. I don't know how I got so lucky. It's just,
No,
they're just lovely people.
they really are. Anybody I've come across who also has I was at an event last October. I met a dude in a Strange Familiars shirt, and I was just like, oh my god! Like I think I had just spoken to you like not long before that and stuff. I was like, so I was telling them all about just the nicest people. It's the show I like to listen to on long drives, which thankfully I've been having a lot of recently. I'm about to have a few hours to myself tomorrow, so I'll probably be listening to Strange Familiars and catching up. But yeah, guys, again, thanks so much. And
thank you.
everybody, get on that big Philip experiment. Go check out patreon.strangefamiliars.com and just strangefamiliars.com. I'll have everything linked below.
I still have
And,
that book sitting here that I want to do that show with you on. I haven't read it yet, though. I've been so busy. As soon as I read it, where is it?
The Boy They Tried to Hide.
Yeah, that one. The Boy They Yeah. Still want to do that show with you, but I need to read the book.
Absolutely. No, that brief dive into temporary psychosis that book gave me is kind of why I was so interested in the Philip experiment in the first place.